Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin.
Tony Gentilcore, way too long, my friend, since I've had you on here. Great to see your face. And for the audio listeners, well, they're going to hear your voice in a second. You are what I call a legacy fitness writer. You've written for, most of the OG fitness publications. I came across your stuff at the start of my career through T Nation. You were one of the prolific, T Nation writers of that generation. You're the co-founder of Cressy Sports Performance. You've since moved on, and you're the founder of Core Collective, which is your own facility in Boston. It's great to have you.
Yes. Yeah. Me. Thank you. You're right. It's been way too long. I think the last time you and I laid eyes on each other was at some conference somewhere. I know that. And maybe it was Raise the Bar a couple years ago.
2023 Raise the Bar. You and Lisa were there.
Yep.
And the little guy.
And Julian.
Yeah.
You mentioned my writing and how I wrote a lot for T Nation and et cetera. I know you don't have kids, and I'm sure there's many people listening that have kids. It is a dumpster fire of ruining your productivity. Like I've had a number of people, like I was at Mike Boyle's conference this past weekend in Woburn, and I had someone come up and introduce themselves, which is always very nice. And they're like, yeah, I used to read your stuff in T Nation. I loved it. And I was like, man, I really miss writing. Like since having a child and now having a gym, it's just I have not had the time to do as much writing as I had in the past, and I do miss it. It was very cathartic and, helped me kind of stay on top of my game and get my creative juices going. So I hope to get back to it soon.
Well, the last episode that people will listen to, if you guys want to go back to it, it's another legacy T Nation guy. It's Lee Boyce. And we actually talked a lot about this, where the way that people consume fitness information has changed. And I mean, the episode does it justice, but if you think about it, you go back, 15 years, certainly, like, 12 to 20 years. Social media didn't exist in its current form. There wasn't nearly as much. There weren't as many people who were probably creating smart, savvy stuff. Yes, there's all the bullshit that goes on there. But serious fitness consumers who are more niche, I think, as sheer numbers, were going to T Nation and Elite FTS and the other blogs, bodybuilding.com, for this kind of information. And so you guys ultimately were the clearinghouse for this information. And as you alluded to, you were a younger coach. You were probably still learning a lot of things and documenting that stuff, because a lot of the people of your particular generation of doing this were documenting and communicating it as you were figuring out and learning it, right?
Yeah.
That was part of the process of the development of this coach.
100%. Like I would read something elsewhere, or I would, we'd have an in-service at Cressy Sports Performance, and whether Eric was talking or Miguel or Greg or somebody was talking and we learned something there, or I would attend a conference and something would, like be a lightning bolt, and it was like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna expound on that in my own way. We were learning as we were going as well. And now if I'm doing any writing, it's less about the X's and O's of program design or like anatomy and getting the specifics there. It's more like looking back, what would I do differently? Or, how do you kind of set boundaries with clients, and how do you meet your clients where they are? It's still coaching. Don't get me wrong. It's still about that, but it's less about the X's and O's of like getting people strong and jacked, and more about, okay, how can you better motivate this person, and how can you be a better communicator? A lot of that comes from, as you know, my wife is a psychologist, so a lot of that comes from being in her gravitational pull. But yeah, so there's definitely since, as you noted, 2010, 2012, 2008, that era of T Nation, and what I was writing about then, as opposed to what I would be writing about now. Sometimes I write, but it's like I said, less profound, but it's more just like how to just better communicate and be better motivator with your clients. Less sexy stuff is what I'm trying to say. Like to most people, to us it's great, but certainly on Instagram or TikTok, that probably wouldn't get many views or likes, that type of topic.
This episode is brought to you by Renaissance Periodization and the RP Hypertrophy app. RP is the industry leader in muscle building, coaching, and education. This app is like having a coach in your pocket. It gives you everything you need, including training programs, form videos. It gives you all your sets, reps, and weights, so you just show up and follow the plan. It adjusts each week based off your progress. And the app was created by Dr. Mike Israetel, Nick Shaw, and the team at RP, who I've known for many years. And the entire team are incredible people who've always been supportive and generous with me, so I know their character and are easy to endorse. My library contains several RP books, and I've used RP training principles in my workouts and coaching with my clients for many years, long before the explosion in popularity of their YouTube channel, which is worth checking out. RP is the first sponsor I felt remotely comfortable endorsing after over 7 years of podcasting. And if hiring a one-on-one coach isn't for you, using the RP Hypertrophy app is the next best thing to maximize your gains and take the guesswork out of your program. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. If you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. And I've also got a serious discount for you of up to $50 US. Go to rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP, or go to the link below in the show notes, and that's rpstrength.com/coats. Use the code COATSRP.
Well, and this is where I want to go with this is, and I'll frame it as, let's say the listener here is might be a total beginner. Maybe you're someone who this episode was shared with you by someone who's like, hey, this is going to be a really good episode to help you get started. Or, someone's on their journey and they're still learning a lot. And we certainly know that fitness information can be really overwhelming. As I alluded to, the last episode really talks about like the social media side of stuff, and we can definitely go there. But what do you think are still good places to start, good resources, and maybe it's even people, for the person to start out who's trying to get in shape, get in the gym, or trying to get consistent and not get pulled in a million directions?
What book saved me a lot of typing, and it still does, is The New Rules of Lifting. Do you remember that book? I forgot when the first edition was.
I don't have it here, but I have Advances in Functional Training, which is probably a little bit more of a trainer book. This one's really good.
I remember one time when Dean and I were presenting, I don't know where it was, but one of the questions was asked, like someone asked both Dean and I, what is the one resource you would give a trainer, like a coach? And both of us said that book by Boyle, because we both said that book helped us connect the dots between writing a coherent program and getting results for trainers, for a fitness professional. When it comes to your question and someone who's just trying to get started with some kind of routine, New Rules of Lifting, and there's a few iterations of that book. There's New Rules of Lifting, there's New Rules of Lifting for Women, and there's been a couple of others, all of them written by Alan Cosgrove and Lou Schuler. The one directed toward women was co-authored by Cassandra Forsyth. I want to say they're definitely at least over a decade old, but the information is still sound and it still works. Those books are about as simplified as you're going to get. It's like, here's why you should lift weights. Here's why strength training is good for you. Here's why you should prioritize it. Yes, you need to include cardiovascular training and you need to watch your diet, of course. But the strength component, the lifting heavy things component is important. And, people are doing it now, of course. I mean, more and more people are in the gyms with barbells in their hands than ever before. And that's a great thing. Now I think it becomes a little bit convoluted there's so much information out there on social media that people kind of get a little bit of paralysis by analysis, or analysis by paralysis. I forget what the actual term is there. But they start getting too into the minutia, and they start getting too cute and like too fancy with their programming, and it doesn't have to be all that complicated. I can show you my folder of programs that I have on my laptop with a lot of my clients, and it's pretty basic stuff. It is not sexy programming at all. I mean, it's okay. We're going to squat, we're going to hinge, we're going to push, we're going to pull, we're going to carry, we're going to do single leg work. Bye. And see you later this week.
Go ahead, you first.
No, go ahead.
So in my experience with coaching clients, this will be relevant to anybody who's trying to figure it out, what's the best program. And then you hear about coaches who are giving the same program to everybody, cookie cutter programming. And it's like, well, that doesn't work. But then it doesn't mean the opposite is also the answer. So this very, very nuanced, completely rewritten program for every single person. Oh, I can't have lunges in Jenny's program because Beth's got it in her program. It's like, no, they probably both would benefit maybe from a different type of single leg, split squat, lunge type motion, depending on their injury history. But then what you do is you pretty much work off of like templates, and experienced coaches understand that, oh, these two people have similar goals and they have similar training experience. Then they're probably going to at least work off a similar template. We take into consideration injury history, preferences, and they may use different variations of something. There's going to be some horizontal pressing, some vertical pressing, some horizontal rowing. There's going to be some vertical pulling stuff. There's going to be some type of squat motion. We're probably going to have single leg and double leg across the program. You're going to have hinging stuff, and you might have them carry stuff, do some core, and maybe, I like things like sled pushing, so something that's sort of anaerobic conditioning. And then we may put in some cardio that works for them. And there's a lot of different options within it. And then there's a lot of different ways you can structure the program. Maybe they like push-pull legs, that works for their schedule. Maybe it's upper-lower split. Maybe it's full body, which actually works really well for most people starting out. Maybe someone's advanced and they really like a bodybuilding traditional split, which is totally okay, like despite some of the hate it gets. But it tends to start with a very basic array of templates, and then you tend to individualize based upon the feedback someone gives you.
Yes, I would agree with probably 98.5% of what you just said. And
Tell me what you don't agree with. Tell me what you don't agree with.
Well, yes, I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel with a lot of our clients. And, assuming if someone's coming to me with a robust injury history, and I do kind of have to peel back the onion on, okay, why does their lower back hurt, or why is their shoulder bothering them? Take that aside, because I would say that's not the case for a lot of clients that we see out of the gate. Most clients come in and they feel fine. They're not coming in because they're referred from a physical therapist or anything. With that client in mind, I would say most people just need the same shit. Like, they're all going to goblet squat. They're all going to do some form of lunge, to your point. Maybe definitely for the first month, maybe for 2. And then I can get more individualized with how I see them progressing. Like, I'm the one that's seeing them week to week, how they're loading. Cause then in that time, even if I am starting with a pretty standard, what I would call a beginner program, I'm also at the same time teaching them how to load and teaching them, okay, when do you know to add more weight, or when do you know to back off? And because as well as I do, because I know you're still coaching, that the first question out of someone's mind when they see their new program is, oh, I see all these exercises on here, but how much weight should I be using on these exercises? And I look at them and I don't know. Like, we have to figure that out. And that then there becomes a conversation like, well, how do you do that with a beginner? Well, to me, okay, I'm starting off with a standard program, like let's say full body. So they're going to do a goblet squat and they're going to pair that with a, I don't know, push up or whatever. I like to start with rep ranges. So what I'll say is I say, okay, you're going to do all these exercises for 8 to 12 reps. Okay. The idea here is you're just going to pick a weight. I don't care. We're just going to make sure that you're doing the exercise correctly. You're staying safe, and you're just getting used to the exercise. I don't care how much weight you're using out of the gate per se. Once we get that out of the way, then I say, okay, now you see how we have this rep range here, 8 to 12. The goal is for you to hit the higher rep scheme for every single one of your sets without going to technical failure. If you go to technical failure, we're going to cut the set short. So you might stop at 9 reps. Okay. And your knees start caving in, your back starts rounding. Okay. Set's done. Next set, you get 9 reps again. Okay. Set's done. So on and so forth. Then I'm like, okay, we're staying at the same weight week to week until you achieve 12 reps on every single set. And when that is achieved, then we are going to up the weight. We're not going to change the exercise. We're just going to increase the weight 5 to 10 pounds. So to me, you might think differently. I don't think you will, but you might think differently. I think that's a pretty nice way of starting off a beginner program. And then after that, maybe that might take a month or 2 or 3. Then we can start having a conversation on reps in reserve, or what perceived exertion is, like RPE. I like to say effort instead of exertion. Just I think most people can understand effort more than they can understand exertion. Because then you can start testing out your clients. Then you might say, okay, they're hitting 12 reps in all their exercises, but they're still using they're kind of underloading themselves. Most people will generally underload themselves. They're stronger than they think they are. They just are scared to kind of push themselves. So then I start saying, okay, we're going to do some indicator sets or test sets, or we're going to figure out, like, okay, how are you really loading yourself adequately? So I'll say, okay, you just hit 12 reps in all these sets. We're going to do one more set, and we're going to do an AMRAP set. We're going to do as many reps as you can with the same weight that you just hit 12 reps on in every set. And if they, lo and behold, what usually ends up happening after several weeks is, like, yeah, they'll do their 12 reps. Then I say, okay, we're going to do a test set. And then they bang out 22 reps. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously we're not using enough load here. So, and it just starts to get the wheels turning for them. Like, I'm not calling them out. Like, I'm not like pointing my finger at them. Ha, you loser. Like, I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just stating a fact. It's like, okay, listen, like, you just did 10 more reps than what the program called for. So now we're starting to, I don't know, my friend Tony Bonvecchio, I'm stealing this term from him. I'm starting to teach my clients how to load themselves rather than telling them how to load themselves. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of my job as their coach is to, like, watch them do a set of something. Then I'll look at it, I'll ask them how they feel it went. And then I'll say, okay, on the next set, we're gonna bump it up 5-10 pounds because everything looked good to me. Let's go. But if I'm not there to do that, a lot of my clients only work with me once, maybe twice a week in person, but they're also training at another gym throughout the week, at a commercial gym on their own. I'm not there to tell them to add more weight or take more weight off. So, by implementing these AMRAP sets every now and then, just to kind of get an idea of, like, okay, are you really loading yourself as aggressively as you should? They start to just learn to load themselves rather than me telling them how to do it, if that makes sense. I think I explained that adequately.
There's a huge confidence building aspect. I'll add a couple of pieces of depth to why I too love the 8 to 12 rep range, especially for early programming stuff. It's almost a sweet spot. I mean, there's a reason why the classic bodybuilders seem to overwhelmingly spend time in there. We now have great, robust research that you can build muscle at any rep range as long as you get relatively close to failure. For practical purposes, it's probably within about 5 reps of failure, but people aren't good at knowing how close they are to failure. So we tend to say kind of within 2 reps of failure. There's a lot of argument whether or not you need to hit absolute failure or not, or even how that's defined. Let's set that aside for now. 2, we now know that high rep structures actually cause more nervous system fatigue than the lower rep stuff, for sure. So I find that 8 to 12 is a really nice sweet spot where we're going to be dealing with a load where someone can actually have pretty darn good form. Okay. That they get enough reps to actually practice a motor skill. There's something really important here in getting a chance to learn the motor skill. Now, I know that there's a big popularization in some corners of lower reps for muscle building, and there's a lot of people claiming that that's optimal. I'm a little skeptical on the research on that. I also think that very experienced lifters who also happen to have built a lot of muscle, you can maintain muscle mass pretty well on lower volumes and these sort of things. And while I think that something like even a deadlift probably makes sense because of the nature of the way that form can break down and fatigue. Doing something like a deadlift, which is a little bit more technically complex, I tend to bias a little bit lower rep range for that, maybe barbell squatting, that sort of stuff. But for a lot of isolation work, I find that, someone claims that, oh, you don't need more than like 6 reps of, I don't know, it's a dumbbell curl or a side lateral. And then, of course, go look at the form that you're going to use in order to get to near failure with that kind of load to be near failure at 6 reps. And it's garbage form, right?
Yep.
So there's all sorts of problems with that for people who actually coach real human beings in general population, on a full-time basis like you and I still do. So theory all you want, research all you want, even if it's good, I think it ignores a lot of practical implications. And we're probably mostly talking about the general population, newer lifters, et cetera, not advanced bodybuilders. Okay. But then once you start getting above 12 reps, there's another thing no one talks about. And I don't think you can really quantify this in research, but you start getting bored and unfocused on the reps of the form. Now, I was just with my friend Nick Shaw, RP. They tend to have some programming that gets up into higher reps sometimes. It's not all the time. Sometimes it's actually really good to turn around and do a set of 20 or 30 of something. Squats, barbell squats, I wouldn't recommend it. That's terrible shit. But that stuff can be really good for, as you just said, AMRAP, seeing where you are. It kind of develops some toughness and stamina. There are also the people that talk about fatigue as if it's this, oh my God, fatigue is this terrible thing. You have to manage it for sure, but we're not avoiding fatigue at all costs. We also develop stamina and tolerance for these sort of things, the mental toughness to train pretty hard. So I find that 8 to 12 rep range, especially for newer lifters, is a phenomenal space to spend most of your time.
Yeah. I can't disagree there. I'm right there with you in the sense, like when we started talking, like if we're going to start introducing squatting and deadlifting, I'm with you. I tend to bias maybe even like 5 reps, 6 reps, just because I do find that if you are doing higher reps of those exercises, fatigue can come forth a little bit more quickly, and then technique starts to break down. But I mean, I just had a slew of new clients start up with me recently, and they were trap bar deadlifting 8 reps the other day. They survived. Like,
love it.
It's like, in the initial few weeks, like I really don't care that I'm getting them even close to technical failure. Really, I want to make sure that every rep is clean and really with those lifts in particular, I'm also teaching them, okay, how to ramp up tension and like be a little bit more present with not just you're not just bending over and picking a bar off the ground. Like you have to have a little bit more intent here. I'm teaching a little bit more nuance than just doing the exercise for the sake of doing the exercise, making sure they're feeling it where they're supposed to be feeling it. I think a very cogent question to ask your clients after they do an exercise is like, where do you feel that? If they do a deadlift and they feel like, oh, I feel it in my eyeballs, like that. Okay, well, that's not where you're supposed to feel it. Like, so
don't get me wrong. I've felt sets of deadlifts and squats and I had these lifted days in my eyeballs. That's like bleeding edge of intensity shit.
Yeah,
so, but I don't recommend that for beginners.
Yeah. So I think in this and how long we stick with that rep range. I mean, a year. I mean, beginners are beginners for a reason. Like most people, they can look at a barbell and they're going to get results. Like, and this is even going into the fact that we can start playing around with tempos and stances and width and grip widths and stuff like that, and pauses and so someone can theoretically stay in that rep range for a very, very, very long time. And which is why I like it, because again, if they're doing 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps, your goal is to stay put until you hit the higher rep scheme for every single set. And once you do that, you increase weight. That is progressive overload, which is what we want. So I don't care if they start with a 10-pound goblet squat. Like, okay, well, if you achieved 12 reps on 3 sets in week 1, week 2, we're going to do 15 pounds and we're just going to continue going. Like, I mean, it's progressive overload, which is what we want. So, yeah, I know I sound like a broken record, but
part of this is to uncomplicate when we hear all this complexity thrown around. So hopefully people listen will, if they're kind of screaming their brain, well, what about this? What about this thing? What about this influencer said this? I mean, there may be a time and a place for it, but there are also many roads to success. Someone could be within the theme of what we're talking about, but technically in different numbers or have a different approach, and set up a beginner to learn and be successful and give them something that they're really enjoying and may not follow our playbook. It doesn't mean, but we're also talking about what probably has worked across a large number of clients over, well over a decade and over 2 for you. And the stuff that we know from practical experience that also is well supported by the body of research and the industry's practice.
Yeah. And I think an important component that a lot of incoming or newer coaches and trainers fail to realize too is this idea of motivation and like the different ways to motivate your clients. And not all of our new clients are only motivated by putting more weight on the bar. Some people need it's a little deeper than that. Some people, are scared to do certain lifts. I mean, I tell this I tell this story often when I'm coaching other trainers, how Ben Bruno, when he was an East Coast guy. He grew up on the East Coast. He was coaching at Boyles for many years. In East Coast and West Coast, like he moved to the West Coast, so he went from training people in the East Coast, which I always say like East Coast is a little bit more grittier. Like I'm in Boston, so I always think about like Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore. I just feel like East Coast is a little bit grittier. The weather sucks at times, and people tend to be a little bit more performance based. Like, okay, let's put some more weight on the bar, let's go. And he worked with a lot of athletes when he was at Boyles. So he was working with a lot of high level hockey players and football players and baseball players. So he went from that environment to then transitioning to the West Coast, where people are a little bit more aesthetically minded. Like they could give two shits about pulling a 2 times body weight deadlift. They don't care. They want to look good because the weather is beautiful year round, and they're wearing less clothes. And it's more of an aesthetic feel there. And I remember when he first moved there, we stayed in contact, and we were going back and forth on text message or maybe email. And he told me a funny story how he had a several of his clients that would arrive for their first session, and he'd have a barbell on the ground to deadlift, and he's like, okay, we're gonna learn how to do a barbell deadlift. And they look at him like he had 3 heads on his face. And like, it was like, I'm not picking that barbell up off the ground. I'm just not doing that. It's gonna make me big and bulky, whatever. All the common myths and misconceptions that we've eye rolled at for many years came to fruition there. No surprise. But what he did, I think you may remember too, like early in Ben's writing career when he was writing for T Nation, not that he invented the landmine, but he definitely popularized the landmine and showcased many cool exercises that you could do with the landmine. So what he did was he took the barbell, put one end of it into the landmine, put a plate on the other end, and so, okay, now we're gonna lift that. And they're like, oh, this is great. This is the great exercise. They were doing a deadlift. And so it was just a different application of the deadlift. It wasn't like this beefy powerlifting conventional deadlift. It was just basically it was a Romanian deadlift, but with a landmine. And it just goes to show that it's just how people's misconceptions and myths of fitness, because some people are intimidated or fearful of a certain exercise because maybe they had a bad experience with it in the past or weren't coached well on it. And so that's a thing. But certainly they might think that, oh, if I lift anything over 50 pounds, I'm going to turn into He-Man, which again is not going to happen. So, again, as coaches and trainers, it's important that we have to figure out where to meet our clients and meet them where they're at. Some people are going to come in ready to get after it right out of the gate, and they want to learn how to squat correctly and deadlift correctly, and great. Others are not going to be there. So we have to figure out, number one, what their goals are and not what your goals are. And then obviously, eureka moment here, we're going to write a program based off that, like what their ability level is, what their goals are, what their injury history is. But I think it's important, where my wife kind of comes into this equation is the self-determination theory, like all these new levels of motivation. So when we talk about autonomy, giving people a little bit more choice in the exercises that they're doing in their session, because the last thing I want to do with especially a new client is to force feed exercises to them. So actually one question that I ask quite often in my initial intake or my initial assessment with a new client is, what exercises do you absolutely hate? If I put X exercise in, what give me a list of exercises that if I put them in there, you would just be like, these again? Because I want to know, I don't want to force feed an exercise to someone. Now, I might have a different opinion and think like a certain exercise is valuable for them to work on based on their injury history or whatever. But again, you already said it. There's more than one way to train to get to point A, from point A to point B. So, but this idea of autonomy and giving people a little bit more choice is powerful. So, if someone does a full session with me and I have 10 minutes to spare, oftentimes I'll be like, hey, do you want to do some extra arm work? Do you want to do some extra glute work? Do you want to do some conditioning? What do you want? What's going to get you inspired, or what's going to rev you up to finish strong on this session?
Making
And they're
it
going to
fun.
say it, and they're going to say, exactly, they're going to say it, and I'm going to lean into it. Like, I'm going to go, okay, I'll grab my little whiteboard and I'll say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Because they're going to be into it. They're going to, some clients want to do Turkish get-ups. I'm like, why the fuck would you want to do that? But it's not my set. Like, if you want to do Turkish get-ups, as long as you're doing them correctly, I'm going to coach you up on them. Some people want to do a kettlebell circuit. So yeah, we'll do that. But then also we can have a conversation on when clients show up, like as a coach, like I have everyone has their program. They're working off of their I use Google Sheets or Google Drive. They have their programs in their phone, and okay, today calls for, we're going to work up to a heavy set of 5 on your deadlifts. And then when we hit that top set, we're going to back off 10%. We're going to do X amount of reps at this percent. So they have a plan. But I just know that they walk in that day that I can just tell that there's no juice there. I posted about that today, actually. My deadlift today, I just did not have my juice. I posted a fail at work. I posted a missed rep, which is okay to showcase. Like we miss reps too sometimes. I don't miss them a lot, but they do happen. But so when I see that happen, I see a client coming in to their session and they're just not feeling it. I'll be like, okay, we have to go to plan B today. We have to kind of like modify a little bit. What's going to get you motivated? Do you want to do front squats or trap bar deadlifts, or safety squat bar or Duffalo bar? Or so giving them a little bit of choice, whether it's the barbell, the main lift itself. I like to program sessions where there is the main lift. It's a hinge day, a squat day, a press day, whatever. You get to pick the main movement or the implementation of that movement. And so long as I know if that's going to fire them up and get them a little bit more into their session, then why wouldn't I use that to my advantage as a coach? There's a lot of, I want to hear what your take on it too.
Well, yeah, the biggest obstacle is not choosing the right exercise. The biggest obstacle is to get people to get into the gym and then to stay there and not lose motivation. If they enjoy their training and they like their program, then they're far more likely to be successful. And
which is kind of what I'm alluding to, is why I'm saying all this. Yeah.
So I do not believe there's a single exercise that is a must. I think there are a lot of variations. And here's another one that is highly underrated, yet when you're actually coaching people or from your own experience, you'll realize is sometimes one exercise feels like garbage on a joint and a similar exercise feels fine. Weird example. I can landmine press. There's a shoulder press machine that feels really good at the gym I go to. I can Arnold press, where there's the bullshit version where you sweep wide, then you press up, then you come down, then you pull back in again. No, it's always upward motion, like a corkscrew motion. Those 3 things feel fine on my shoulder, especially my left. But a shoulder press with dumbbells in a slightly wider position, even sometimes at 45, my left shoulder just does not love that. Yet, all the other versions, which tend to allow me to either be a little more stable or tuck my elbow forward more to my midline, my shoulder is fine with those. So guess what I'm not going to do? The thing that keeps causing me pain, I'm going to do the other things that are putting fairly similar tension on muscle. And if I ever hear anybody argue and say that Arnold press is useless for muscle building, I'm like, I don't think it's the most optimal exercise for pure tension on muscle, but it actually allows for you to work through a better range of motion. And it tends to be really hypoallergenic on the shoulder for most people. So, and you know what, in my programs as well, I find that sometimes clients find it's a fun alternative to always doing shoulder press one way. So there's nothing wrong with it in a long-term view.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I like incline dumbbell presses for my shoulder is like hell. It feels like it's just not, but if I go flat or decline or whatever, I'm fine. Hack squats, feel weird on my knees, but regular back squatting is fine. So
depends on the machine. Well,
Yeah.
here's a good example. I've talked about this recently. I sprained my ACL in my knee falling downstairs over a year ago. And so even like a body weight free squat feels a little goofy. Neurologically, I just don't trust it. Doesn't feel great. Put on knee sleeves and a pendulum squat machine. And guess what? I can load the hell out of that thing. It
Boom.
feels fat.
Yeah.
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 Reverse lung deficit, reverse lunges, deep, loaded, heavy, always okay. But standing in my own body weight, it just does not love how it feels. So guess what? I'm going to load the hell out of the things that feel fine and keep my legs strong, which is better for the long-term state of my
Yep.
knee anyway. Right?
I would call that finding a trainable menu, right? So a lot of what I do with my clients is just figuring out their trainable menu. I mean, you and I have been training people for many years in the commercial gym setting and a private gym setting. People love to make excuses for why they can't train. Like I just had a client text me the other day. He's like, "Oh, my golf swing was off, and something fell off, and he went to see his doctor, and he's going to get further imaging, but it seems like he probably has a hernia that he has." So I was like, "Oh man, that sucks. Like, yeah, keep me posted." But not for nothing, there's still a lot of stuff we can do. Like we can work around this, like because the last thing I want my clients to do is take 3 weeks off. Um, don't get me wrong, there are instances where yes, we need it like, post surgery. Like I've had clients like they want to come in like the 2 days after they had surgery. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on, like chill. Like let's the weights aren't going to go anywhere. Like I'm not going anywhere. Just relax and recover, and then we'll have a
The
discussion.
woman who's just had a kid is back in the gym
Yeah,
3 days later, right?
yeah,
Like, holy
exactly.
shit. Let your body
Yeah,
heal.
just yeah, come on. But for the most, I would say 90% of the time, we can work around it. I mean, hell, I ruptured my Achilles 5 years ago during COVID, and I continue with my training. Like, granted, I wasn't weight bearing on my right leg for many, many months. So I think we did an article with Luca on
I
this
was
with
telling
yeah,
someone this weekend, we were at the Real Coaches Summit with Luca, but I was telling someone else about this article that we wrote, and Luca was there, and this escalating, like, not real competition. Luca was doing supported Bulgarian squats, and he would load up, and then I would do a little more the next week, and then he'd go.
yep,
We weren't competing each other. We just happened to be doing this. And then all of a sudden, here's Tony with a, recovering ACL, just is loading up 3 plates aside
yeah.
on your quote good
Yeah,
leg.
my left leg was like the T1000 during that time. Like it came, but and a lot of people coming off injury. Like I had a young athlete was scared because he he was a nincompoop, and he got angry about something. At first I said the word nincompoop. I don't know where that came from. But he punched a wall and he broke his finger, and so he was in a cast for 5 weeks. And I remember on week one, I was like, okay, we're gonna, there's stuff we can still do on that injured side. However, we're gonna do all of our pressing and our rows on that left side. You're gonna be fine because like research will back this up. There's gonna be a neural carryover to
I've
the
got a whole
injured
resource
side.
on this. I reference it constantly. I've got
Yeah.
this resource that I wrote, Kabuki. It's now on my website, and it's all
Yep.
about cross education, and it's amazing.
Yes. And but he didn't believe me. I mean, he was 14. Of course, he didn't believe me. But he was like, "Oh, am I going to be like unbalanced, or am I going to be?" I was like, "No, we're talking about 5 weeks. Like the body's smarter than that. Like you're not going to become triple the size on one side than the other in a matter of 5 weeks." But but I know for a fact that if you train the non-injured side, there's going to be carryover to the injured side. And then when you actually do start rehab and when you do start training, it's gonna come back a little bit quicker. So this idea of trainable menu, I advocate to a lot of young trainers and coaches to adopt it right away, because it's a nice mindset to have as a coach when you're dealing with people who do get injured. I mean, everyone has a shoulder that gets pissed off. Everyone tweaks their lower back at whatever time. And we need to figure out ways to continue to keep that consistency going, because that's another huge factor of results is consistency. Like what's going to prevent somebody from getting results they want is, they might get after it hard for 3 weeks, and they go on vacation for a week, and then they come back for a week, then they're away for a week because they have a hangnail, and they just lack consistency. This idea of the trainable menu, it's like, okay, well, if you're not injured, let's go. Like, there's nothing holding us back. But if you do have something come up, we got to figure out a way to train around it. And that it's very easy to do. Sometimes you got to put pen to paper and like literally make a list of like, okay, someone's back is off or someone ruptured their Achilles or their ACL. Okay, what can we do? Make a list of exercises that they can do. And then even if it's just 3 exercises, I don't care. Hammer those 3 exercises.
I know you have a full educational resource on this, and coaches, it's like the same thing with the resource on training with the injured limb. Coaches figure it out over time with enough exposure to it, but we've created resources that, hey, they're here. And if anybody wants yours, they can message you and find out about the trainable menu stuff. But we've created stuff that will actually help coaches get to it faster, earlier. And this also works really well for the general population as well. And there was another thought I had in here. There's a lot of narrative around finding justifications to not work out, right? And an injury or other life disruption just becomes such a convenient narrative. And I like challenging people on this so they recognize that there's probably something screaming at them that, well, they want, and I don't love the word excuses because it gets weaponized, but let's call it what it is. People do sometimes look for easy excuses and socially acceptable, justifiable reasons to not do it. Well, I'm hurt. Oh, I can't go to the gym now. There are so many workarounds. So, and I just want people to challenge themselves on those narratives as they arise. So, what are some of the other common things that almost inevitably arise when someone starts out, they're a bit newer to it, or they struggle with consistency? What are those obstacles? Because there's certain things I certainly see, and I want people to experience them so that they can actually learn to navigate it, prepare, and bounce back.
Well, we can't. I think we can't disregard this idea that it is hard. I mean, we are when someone is not used of putting in effort or exerting their body in a certain way, it's going to feel off and it's going to feel weird. And we have to explain the difference between delayed onset muscle soreness, which is normal, and being hurt. Like that's a thing. And because they might think that because their hamstrings are and quads are on fire and it's hard to sit on the toilet after 2 days ago they did a bunch of squatting that they're hurt. Well, no, that's just normal muscle soreness. I mean, and then that arises another discussion. Like certainly I'm not trying to make new clients super sore initially because that's a lot, because that is the thing, and they get discouraged by being too sore to train because that's not going to do anyone any favors. So I think working around this concept of effort and exerting the body, like that's going to be new. It's going to be nuanced to someone who has never done it before. Certainly there's work life stuff. I mean, day-to-day life stress that comes up that's going to affect their ability to be consistent. But I'm there to be as much of a coach that I need to be to keep them motivated to train. Because I'll often repeat. I learned this trick from my wife, Lisa, the psychologist. When I find someone who's being inconsistent with their training, but yet they're getting frustrated, they're not getting results, I'll use the word I'm curious or I'm interested in, because Lisa uses this in therapy sessions a lot. She'll listen to the client say something. I'm not listening in on her sessions, but I can hear like little words here and there. But she'll often say, I'm curious. Because like they'll say like something, and like if using an example for me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm curious. I remember during our first intake, you mentioned your goals were to lose 20 pounds or reduce your back pain or, to whatever, but we're also not being consistent. Like, what do you think about that? And sometimes if you just kind of put it back on them and get them thinking about it and they'd be like, yeah, you're right. Like, um, you're
There's
right.
no
I
judgment.
haven't, because there's no judgment, not at
And
all.
there's no
Like I'm
judgment in
not,
that language. That specific language is
I'm
great for no
not,
judgment.
if you were talking to 2010 Tony, it would probably have been a different story. I would have been like, well, you got to tough it out and you just got to put Wu-Tang on and let's go. I mean, some people still respond to that, but for most people, I need to shut up and, learn to listen a little bit more. And, uh, so yeah, it's just, I lost my train of thought there, but
I'll drop back because there's a couple of things
Yeah.
that happens to everybody. Number one is we all get sick. We all get colds, flus, et cetera, whatever. That will always happen. Someone, new client, they're cruising every week. They're stronger. They're getting those neuromuscular initial strength performance gains, and they're feeling great. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're out 4 or 5 days because they caught a cold, and then they're struggling to come back again. And I need everybody to experience that because that is always going to be part of life, right?
True.
Definitely work, family stuff. There's always interference. Going on a vacation. A lot of people, they are pretty good. They go on vacation, then they'll tell themselves, I'm going to work out while I'm on vacation. And then it doesn't quite happen. And then all of a sudden they're struggling to come back in again. And it's the skill of bouncing back. Part of that is a structure and support. It's one of the reasons why I like having a good program or a good coach. But even for the people who are just figuring this stuff out, knowing that this stuff will happen and having a bit of a plan and an intention, and maybe it's just scheduling it so that way you jump back quick.
I think going to your vacation point, like I'm not going to tell someone not to go on vacation. I'm certainly not going to tell someone, yeah, you need to work out while you're on vacation, because I know personally I hate working out when I'm on vacation.
Me too.
We're leaving to go to Florida for spring break on Sunday. Lisa is more of a psychopath than I am. Like, she's going to want to get up and like go to the hotel gym or whatever. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I almost always advocate when I tell my clients, listen, there is zero pressure. Like, if you're going on vacation, enjoy your freaking vacation. Like, don't stress like getting your workouts in and being super restricted with your diet. Like, go enjoy it. Like, more often than not, people end up losing weight on vacation anyway, even though they are eating shitty foods, because they're not stressed and they're actually moving more than they think. But yeah, you're right. Having these plans in play, and not being the hard-o coach, and putting pressure on them to like live up to these expectations. Like, you have to stay consistent even when you're on vacation. Like, shit comes up, man. Like, I get it. Like, that's all good. Like, I use this term 3x52, which I snaked off of trainer Charlie Reed years ago. He wrote about this originally years ago. Because oftentimes people will say, how often should I be working out, or how many reps should I be doing, blah, blah. And I'll say, listen, at the end of the day, my goal for you is 3x52. If I get you in the gym 3 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, something good is going to happen. Like, it is impossible for something not to change. Like, because again, it's just consistency.
And let's say someone loses 2 weeks to being sick a year. Let's say they take 2 vacations for a week, right? Mm-hmm. Or some other sort of disruption. You get 3x48. Is that going to
still not bad?
No, it's amazing. You're light years ahead of almost everybody.
Still not too shabby. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find saying, I found this a lot of my new clients, like the number 3 is a very non-intimidating number. Because I think a lot of people, when they ask me how many weeks or how many days should I be working on to get the results that I want, and I think a lot of them expect me to say 5, 6, you got to work out every day. That's just not realistic for a lot of people. So when I say 3x52, it's like, okay, yeah, like that's not that I can do that. And particularly if they're following a plan that I am writing, they're not doing any thinking really. Really, all they have to do is show up. Which that's another conversation, of course. Like, the showing up part is often the hardest part. But that's why we're working on finding exercises that they like to do that don't hurt their body, that we give them a little bit of choice. We help them work out amongst a community that's supportive or with cool people. That's why CrossFit's very popular, or does very well, because people like to train around people that are like-minded. If we're working on all those things, that motivation, that number 3 is going to come to fruition. And lo and behold, the years passed, and it becomes the goals for it to is for exercise and these habits to just kind of be ingrained in their day-to-day weekly living, where it becomes more intrinsic. It becomes a little bit more of their, like, for you and I, going to the gym, it's just part of our inner fabric. Like, there's really no reason that we would skip the gym on purpose. Like if we know we have that we want to go deadlift or squat, or outside of being super sick or vacation, like we're going to go to the gym, you and I. It's like it's just intrinsic. It's part of our personality. A lot of people don't have that out of the gate, and there's many different levels of extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. But if we can get somebody to scoot a little bit closer to more of that intrinsic, where it just becomes part. There's not an intrinsic factor. Like the extrinsic factor would be like, oh, I only go to the gym because my wife nags me because she wants me to go to the gym. Like the extrinsic motivation there is like for my wife not to nag me. That's the only reason why they're going to the gym, that's something. Like that's. But
if it gets someone started versus nothing, maybe, right? It's not sustainable.
Or their doctor said, my blood lipids are really shitty. Like I need to do more cardiovascular work. Like that's an extrinsic factor. Some people's extrinsic factors, they want to look a little bit better. They want to have a six pack or what. That's certainly better. Like at least there's a goal there. But once somebody becomes more intrinsically motivated, where it just becomes part of their routine, they just do it because that's what it's Monday, right? It's a Thursday, like they go to the gym. Then we're golden. But that is certainly not the goal for everyone. Like the goal isn't for everyone to get to that point. Like there are many, like again, it's a spectrum. So this isn't me saying like the only way you're gonna truly get the best results is to become like this intrinsically motivated guru. Like that's not what I'm saying. But if you can help somebody kind of scoot toward that, like that's great. But again, there are many, there's a huge spectrum here that Lisa would be more qualified to talk about than I am. But our job as the coach and the trainer is to kind of figure that out by, obviously having conversations with our clients and hanging out with our clients. And you start to learn their habits and like what motivates them. And, then we try to lean into that as much as possible. And if that is me telling them, listen, I'm not a hard coach. I'm not going to hold your hand. Like if you don't want to work out on vacation, don't work out on vacation. Like that's fine. And I think once they hear that, a lot of people just need permission, right? They want to hear the permission. Like it's okay. Like, yeah, you can go on vacation and drink scotch. It's fine. But hopefully when you get back and you get back home, okay, then it's time to get back to the plan. Like, so, and I think of course with any coach that takes a lot of, time and expertise to get to that point. But I think the sooner you hear these messages from you and I and other coaches, hopefully it starts to make sense and it becomes more of like the coaching style. Like I've never been a fan of the rah hardo coach. Like the exuberant, boisterous, like, oh yeah, great job. I mean, I think there's a time and place to be a cheerleader. Like, don't get me wrong. I get fired up when a client hits a good lift or they do something they haven't done before, and I have to kind of be the one that brings them up. But I think coaching is a lot more than just telling them to put more weight on the bar and talking about sets and reps. I mean, I think the more you showcase that you are a real person and like you don't live, eat, and breathe fitness and nutrition at all times, I think the better off you're going to be. Like I think it's a breath of fresh air when a coach is like, yeah, carbohydrates are great. Like it's like yeah,
they are great.
I love pizza. Like it's fantastic. Go have some. Like so I don't know where I don't know where I'm going with it, but it's I'm just kind of like waxing poetic on what my how to evolve into like an empathetic coach, right? I think there's been at times there's just a lack of empathy when it comes to coaching. Like it's just I don't like it when I see coaches where it's like, yeah, you gotta you got to be dialed in. The reason why you're not getting results is you're not dialed in. You're not doing X, Y, and Z and this and that. And it's like, shut up. Like, like it's, most people, they just want to go to the gym and feel a little bit better and maybe break a sweat and, have it so their shoulder doesn't hurt. It isn't always about breaking PRs and not feeling the left side of your face after a session because you just had a crazy WOD workout. So,
This entire episode's really been about building in flexibility and adaptability so that way people don't have an all or nothing framework that sets them up to have a hard bar to reach and then feel like they're failing. And then what happens when people feel like they're failing? Then it becomes a justification. Well, first of all, they tend to feel shame and guilt and down on themselves. And then they tend to quit because they move away from that shame and initial discomfort. And I think if we can build that in, a quick example that I found, I have an online women's group strength program, a one-to-many cohort program, and it's early stages. Me and my old partner in it, we built it as like 4 workouts a week, and then there were little pockets where we'd add a 5th optional workout. But what you had is even 4 workouts can be a little bit of a high bar. So over time, I started making it a bit more optional, and I created a spectrum of options between 3 to 5 workouts. And immediately the response and their psychological comfort in doing this got way better because for some of them, 3 was the right amount. It was what could fit. And I also make sure I'm really clear on the message. Give yourself a lot of grace. And if in a week that you can only end up doing 2 workouts, that's perfectly fine. Go at your own pace. There's a lot of go at your own pace. You don't need to stay with the cohort. And what I noticed was there was a lot less drop off from people who started with good intentions, but couldn't meet an arbitrary pace that just didn't fit their life.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've started with in my career who are very deconditioned and haven't done anything active for many years. And they finally get the motivation to hire a trainer. And lucky for them, they hired me. And they immediately think, like, yeah, I want to train 5 days a week. And I'm flat out like, listen, like, I like where your heart's at. Why don't we start with 2 to 3? And like, let's gain some momentum there. And then if we get to the point where you're consistent with that and like things are feeling good and then like your schedule works out the way it should be, then we can have a discussion on adding that 4th day, maybe that 5th day. It rarely ever happens. I think 3 really is the sweet spot for most general population. It's really only my competitive athletes where 4 days a week really works. And that's including a day. One of those days might be more of a conditioning day and not even a lifting day. So, because they just have the flexibility and schedule to be able to pull that off. Like that's literally what they're doing. It's just training for getting ready for their season or getting ready for their sport. Like they don't have a job or kids or a spouse to get in the way. Not the spouses get in the way, but yeah, for general population, that I really can't reiterate enough how like the number 3 is just magical. It's just a non-intimidating, very doable number for most people.
Let's finish up with what are some of your favorite resources? So for the person who's trying to get more consistent, maybe just starting out, learn skills, who are some of your favorite people, favorite resources? Maybe you could throw a couple books, maybe it's like somebody's YouTube,
I mean, we hit 2 already, right? So the New Rules of Lifting is great. I think it advances in program design by Boyle, while it's a little bit geared toward fitness professionals, is still definitely very digestible by Gen Pop. I wouldn't say like that would be a no-go. I'm pretty. I love Dan John's stuff still a lot. I think Dan John's books are there's a lot of life lessons in his philosophy of coaching. And he takes a pretty similar approach too, where it's not like a hardo. He's really all about consistency. I remember one of his more popular programs back in the day was the 1 day a lift program, or 1 lift a day program. Sorry. Literally 1 lift, do that 1 lift that day, and then you're done and move on to the next LA. I mean, how palatable is that? You literally go in and do 1 lift, you're done, like 20, 30 minutes. You come back the next day, do 1 lift. I love that. Like, I think that's a very accessible approach for a lot of people. Now he does a lot of Olympic lifting, which I don't do, but but also it could be a squat, it could be a deadlift, it could be chin ups. I mean, whatever. I still listen to a lot of Mike Boyle stuff. I mean, Eric, of course. I mean, he and I have been friends for many, many years. Mike Robertson, um, you know, Krista Scott Dixon, Girls Gone Strong. A lot of the era that I grew up in my career, there's still the people that I listen to and respect. I mean, I'm sure there are many newer coaches and influencers on TikTok, Instagram that are way more popular than I'll ever be. But I just don't live in that. I just don't live in that platform. And if anything, I just get too eye rolly. Like, there are people I like. I think people get overly into the research where it's like, oh, if it isn't backed by research, then I'm not paying any mind. And there's other people who are just making shit up to make shit up. The answer's always somewhere in the middle. Like, I think you can that pendulum is always going way too far to the right, way too far to the left. Like, I like to just find people who are kind of middle of the road, aren't too strong in their opinions. Like, there's three words that I tend to avoid. Is anytime someone says everyone, always, and never. I'm certainly not the first to say this, I'm sure, but anytime I hear someone say everyone needs to XYZ, or you should never do XYZ, or always do XYZ, then I'm like, they're selling a book, they're selling a product, they're selling a business course. That's really why they're saying that. And that just makes me roll my eyes. So if you can avoid people that are saying like those three words a lot, I think you're in good shape for the people that you should follow.
Good. I'm going to throw a couple of books that came out recently. Our friend Dean Somerset's Rock Solid Resilience.
Yes.
Dean is always a quality resource. And I think especially for anybody who's, a bit concerned about, injury stuff.
Dean's going to be mad that I didn't say his name myself, by the way.
I don't know if he'll be listening to this, but I think you're probably going to be okay. But Dean is always a great resource. I commonly point out that because we work for the same company, I got a big dose of his in-person education very early as a coach. He's one of my most formative role models in the industry. And it was a recent guest. If you guys want to go and listen to Dean, Tony, you and Dean have done a bunch of you guys have courses and collaboration stuff together. My friend Ben Mudge was on recently. He's got a great book called Fitness Without Limits. I think it's a really good, accessible, entry-level thing. So if anybody's listening who's got a person who just doesn't even know where to start and you want to get them a great book, Ben Mudge's book, go back and listen to his episode. I'm definitely going to shout my sponsor, Renaissance Periodization, RP Strength, Dr. Mike Israel and Nick Shaw. They've just got tons of resources. Some of the stuff is definitely a bit more on the applied hypertrophy side of stuff. That's a space they're very strong in. But their stuff's incredible. And I'm not saying this because they're my sponsor. I accept them as a sponsor because I've loved their work for so long. Right. So, I'd be remiss not to point you guys in that direction. And Mike makes this shit fun. Go check out his YouTube channel. If anybody is looking for something a bit more specific, I have tons of great, right here, I'll give you guys one more. Jeff Nippard, who often, has media collaborations with Mike Israel. It's a book that I had handy, The Muscle Ladder. I actually read through this. I'm really impressed with this. I think it's really good. It's very well written and very accessible. And accessibility is key. There's a lot of easy to reference photos in there. So do you have any YouTubers that you really like? Anybody that, no. I don't know if Omar Isuf has been as active. I think Omar's old stuff is great.
Yeah. I mean, Greg Knuckles, when he's doing more stuff on YouTube. Eric Helms. I've always been a fan of his. The guys at Juggernaut. I've always been a big fan. Chad Wesley Smith.
Was just talking about Chad. I've never met him, but Nick Shaw he's a big fan of his. So
Chad, I got to see Chad speak in person. It was actually a weekend blizzard here in Boston. He did a random workshop that I went to. Obviously, super strong guy, but he talks about it in a very normalized way, not a hardcore way, in a very approachable way. I mean, he's a guy who squats 800, 900 pounds, but he's talking about rib position, breathing, and the importance of that and owning that stuff. I mean, that stuff also is very rabbit hole-y, of course. But but yeah, Eric Helms, Andy Morgan, Chad Wesley Smith.
Yeah, because there's another. I think I have them here.
Yeah, Eric and
The
the pyramid of
muscle and strength pyramids, and
yeah,
they have
exactly.
training and
100%.
nutrition.
Yes.
These are
Yes.
great places. Yeah.
Yep. So I feel if I were in my office at my gym, Andrew, I'd have the same bookcase behind me, but I'm in my living room or my kitchen. Yeah, those are all people that I think, they're not flashy on Instagram and YouTube now, but their information really is never really going to go out of style to me. Because it's really just talking about the basics and how to get started, and and then as people explore their own fitness journeys and get more individualized, then they can get more niche and they're going to find their people. But I think the people you and I just blurted out are stellar starting points for anyone.
There's a lot of experience in Timeless people who've had a very long runway of sustainable influence on the industry. They're generally very evidence-based. I'll throw one more and then we'll shout you out. Well, actually two more. Number one is Tony Gentilcore. So everyone, I'm going to break your rule. Everyone needs to follow Tony Gentilcore. And there are tons of resources that go back. If anybody wants like a Jedi deadlifting article, we wrote one together for T Nation a while back. That's a great
that might have
resource.
been the last one I wrote. Yeah,
I think it probably was.
Article, I think. Yeah,
it's a few years. So, and then let's also shout my buddy Luca, host of our. We were just at an event together this past weekend, and Luca puts up tons of stuff on his YouTube and his Instagram.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
as far as if you're an Instagram scroller, go just check out Lucas. He puts up tons of useful video. But for Tony, if you guys want to go follow Tony at Tony Gentilcore on Instagram. And I know you've alluded to, you're not as prolific with putting out a lot of information now, but you have a legacy of resources on your own website.
Oh my God, yeah. I got a ton. And that's going to change at some point. Like I got some stuff brewing that might require me to be more Instagram-y in the future. And certainly, I don't think writing, like that's never going to get old. I mean, there's always going to be an audience for people who want to read and not just watch 30-second clips of whatever. So I'll get back in that seat at some point. It's just a matter of, it's a muscle that's atrophied, right? It's like the writing muscle is it's a muscle just like any other muscle. And I just got to get my reps back in. But I definitely have, like, on my website, I have, I think, 3,000 blog posts, and then all the articles I wrote for Men's Health and Teen Nation, et cetera. Those are all on there.
Timeless stuff, evergreen stuff, right? And where people will not go back and look for social media posts. They will reference timeless resources. And that's why I've been trying to create episodes like this so that these would end up being timeless resources, things that are a little bit more topic-based with, authorities, major influences of mine, people who I think are doing incredible things in the industry, and people who, even if they're hibernating a little bit like Tony likes to do, I try to make sure I keep you forefront in the eyes of the people in the industry. So do me a kindness. Make sure that people in your world know who Tony is. Share this episode, especially, and this episode is really geared towards shareability to someone in your world who's probably having a little trouble getting started, having a little trouble getting consistent. This is the one to share with those people, okay? And then it might just give them something that eases them a little further along and helps them, because we all know you have those people in our world who have a million questions, and it's not feasible for us to necessarily take them to the gym, in our time and space on our schedule to help them directly. And anything that will help more of those people in your world figure it out, because it's really overwhelming to start. Most of us forget what it felt like initially. I try to remember that sometimes to stay humble and have empathy for the people who don't have the course of knowledge that we do. So for everybody listening, please go and follow Tony, dive into his stuff a little bit. If you want any of the resources we mentioned, send either of us a message. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Please continue to support my sponsors. It's been exciting to get sponsors. I mean, that wasn't something I even planned, but I'll share a little theory. When you're listening to an episode of something, watching YouTube, whatever, watching television, you're usually annoyed by ads and sponsors, and I want the sponsorships that I will accept and choose, because I have had people asking for a while. I want them to be gives back. The fact that a company like Renaissance Periodization wanted to sponsor me, that is no small deal. And like I said, really love them for a long time. I'm friends with the community, the people who own and work in that organization. And so that was a deliberate choice to say, yes, this works, and it's a value added, I hope, to you guys. So I want to hear your feedback on that too. Tony, you're amazing as always. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, my man.